Okay, so where was I? So, to introduce my talk, I'm Petty F. Larceny, also Petty Larceny, P. Larceny, Larceny P. Just depends on context mostly. I'm here today to talk on the impact of disasters on personal security. Unfortunately, this topic is very, very broad, so I'm going to kind of limit it a little bit more towards scope. So, first of all, introducing myself, Petty Larceny. I'm a FEMA CERT volunteer. I've been doing that since I took the FEMA CERT course back in 2005. Since then, I've also become an EMT. I didn't go through the final certification process, so I don't have a license to do that, which means if any of you fall over dead, I don't have to help you. I might, but I don't have to. That's why I didn't get certified, but I do have all the education. I'm also an amateur radio operator. I know a lot of people out here are, based on other talks I've given. People went out. I'm also NRA certified pistol instructor, tool and die maker, and I work professionally as an ammunition manufacturer. So I'm, I don't know, kind of varied guy. That's me. We're up doing a trail cleanup and we had a problem rattlesnake. So that was a boom headshot. Topics I'm going to cover. First of all, what is a disaster? What is personal security, and the effects of disasters on people. That's kind of the main thrust of what this is going to be about. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of case studies, especially Hurricane Katrina, because like it or not, Hurricane Katrina was very much the defining event in the United States in terms of disaster recovery and what not to do. I mean, it was a disaster on multiple levels. I'm going to talk back in 2010, my house flooded because of a burst pipe. And nobody was around, and it was, I don't want to say debilitating, but it was definitely problematic. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Japanese earthquake. I mean, that's still something that's unfolding before our eyes. So it's interesting in terms of a couple of aspects, but right now the jury's still out on a number of things. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we can do to prepare for disasters. Definitions. Anybody know what a disaster is? Well, it's bad. Okay, disaster. This is the Merriam-Webster definition. A calamitous event, especially one occurring suddenly, causing great loss of life, that's debatable. Damage or hardship, such as a flood, airplane crash, or business failure. If your business fails and people die, I'm really curious to know what that is. But anyway. Next one, security. Come on, it's a security conference. That's a very good trope. Anybody? DOS? What? Okay, well, I'm just going to skip that, but you're very, very close there. You know, taking it in a broader scope, applying to life, property, and you know, whatnot. The CIA is a very good acronym for that. Once again, Merriam-Webster, freedom from danger, risk, etc. The thing I really want you guys to take away from this is that disasters are personal. If you're affected by a disaster, it's a very, very personal thing. And what you have to do is you have to prepare personally for a disaster. Because if you don't, you know, you may think it's like, oh man, all those people who got hit by Hurricane Katrina, man, that really sucks. Let me give them some money. Well, if you're there, money isn't always what you need. It's like, yeah, that's great. But as it turns out, like all my life's work has been destroyed, my business is destroyed, everything else. And in money, you know, doesn't really help. It's much easier to keep that from happening than to try to take and repay somebody for that loss. So how do disasters threaten personal security? Number one, loss of shelter. That's your home, your livelihood. You got to pay for it somehow. Loss of mobility. This is another big one. Let's say roads are jammed, destroyed, flooded, anything else. You can't move around unless you got a boat, and even then, who knows if you want to navigate those waters. Loss of food and water. Well, here in Southern California, we're very prone to earthquakes. We get a big earthquake, it cuts off the aqueducts, we got no water. Not enough to feed the, or fill the bellies of the 18 million people we have around here. Loss of electricity, this is an obvious one. I mean, the wind blows too hard, we lose electricity. Loss of health and life, another important one. And loss of economic opportunity. This is kind of one of the main things I want you guys to take away from this. If you're prepared for disaster, the economic opportunity, it's like you may be out of work for a couple of weeks, but you're not going to be crippled by it. Understanding the main threats, they come in a couple of different forms. You have direct threats, like you have floodwaters, you have falling debris, flames, and resource conflict. Resource conflict kind of comes in when you talk about civil disturbances. And if we go back and talk about Hurricane Katrina a little bit, that was kind of a very big one, was resource conflict. Indirect, you have hygiene and medicine. So let's say you have a heart condition, you have a family member with a heart condition, making sure you have enough medicine to keep that person okay is a very big one. You also have to have hygiene products. You have to have hand soap. You have to have toilet paper. If you got a wife or a girlfriend, if you're prepared for that special friend, she'll be very, very happy with you if you prepare for it. If not, well, it's just going to be that much worse. Economic impact is one of those indirect ones where you're going to be out of work, your job may be destroyed. So let's talk about case studies. So go to hell, it's every man for himself. This was actually said to a person who came up to a New Orleans police officer looking for help. That's what the police officer told him. So in a disaster emergency, you're in it for yourself. So you got to prepare for yourself and take care of yourself, because the police, the fire, as much as they try to do, they're going to be overwhelmed first thing that happens. So Hurricane Katrina, the interesting thing about Hurricane Katrina was that there was no local emergency response. Everybody who had the wherewithal before and during the evacuation got out. That includes police, firefighters, ambulance drivers. Everybody who could left, which kind of left everybody else kind of stuck. So that was part of the reason why we had just these ongoing failures of emergency response, and everybody's blaming George Bush for it. Well, George Bush is thousands of miles away. Where were the people who lived there? That's what I want to know. The next thing that came from Hurricane Katrina, because there was no first responders, we got massive civil disorder. That goes back to the quote. That cop couldn't help anybody because he was too busy trying to help himself. Going down to the 2010 house flood, pretty much what happened was I got a call, said, hey, there's about 2 inches of water in the living room. And the first thing I thought of when I'm driving home is like, oh God, my computer's on the floor. I run a small business on the side. I had all my CAD drawings and everything else on that computer. If that got flooded, I am screwed. There was years of work on there. Even though I had it backed up elsewhere, it's still one of those things that it would have set me back. As it was, because I also have my shop and my home, I had all the furniture from my house that wasn't damaged or destroyed in my shop. I couldn't work for 2 months. So that was a severe economic impact and has really set me back. And even now I'm still paying for it. So it's just another thing to think about. If you can budget for things, you can come up with alternatives, ways of working, do it. Plan for it and do it. Japanese earthquake of 2011, the interesting thing about this one is that it's a compound disaster. First they had a big earthquake. The nice thing about Japan is that it's a first world country that's very well prepared for earthquakes. Like they've been like, well, we get earthquakes here. We should probably take care of those. They build their buildings to a very, very high standard. They do the geological engineering to make sure that their buildings won't fall down. And for the most part, there wasn't a lot of building collapse in Japan, especially after Kyoto. No, Kobe.
Another thing with Japan is there are very, very few old buildings in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
They constantly rebuild.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of new buildings that are built up to different codes and standards.
But so they get there, none of the buildings fell down, even though you've got video of them having liquefaction out in the park. They're like, wow, look at that, there's water shooting up out of the ground. That's weird. Well, let's go back into our apartment. So from that perspective, yeah, they were without electricity, but if it weren't for the disasters that came afterwards, they would have walked away from it. Like Japan would be like, meh, we had a big earthquake, so what? The next thing that came in was they had an 18-meter tsunami. Do you guys have any idea the scale of that? That's a tsunami wave that's higher than this roof. It's huge. And on top of that, it then sweeps into the nuclear power plant and knocks out the emergency backup generators that were cooling the reactor. So now they have a giant tsunami that's wiped out most of the coastline, which is most of the livable land on the east coast of Japan. And now a huge chunk of that, you can't really spend a lot of time there because of the radiation hazard. Now granted, radiation in those levels, it sounds really hazardous, it really isn't. You know, it's not something you want to spend a lot of time in there, but still, you know, it's one of those things where now you've confined people even more, especially in a country with that kind of population and that kind of topography. So getting a little bit more into the survival and planning aspects, one of the things survival experts and everything else tend to talk about quite a bit is what's called the rule of threes. Rule of threes, 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, and granted, these things are a little bit pliable. You know, if you're outside here, you can probably go more than 3 hours. If you're naked and you're wet and it's snowing, you might not last 30 minutes. So 3 days without water, once again, it's a little bit plastic. And generally 3 weeks without food, unless you're in the Arctic and you're burning 2,000 calories a day just keeping your body warm. Or if you're in the Sahara, you might not need to eat for a month, maybe more. You're probably gonna hate yourself, but you won't need to eat that much. The main thing when it comes to mitigating disasters, especially for yourself, is planning. The number one rule and the prerequisite is having a plan. When you're making your plan, the first thing you have to account for is potential disasters. So I live in Southern California. What do I have to deal with? Well, I got to deal with earthquakes. Well, you guys ever see the shirts from the late 90s? You know, it said what the 4 seasons of LA were. Anybody remember those? I see one nod, a couple others.
Salt, water, vinegar.
Huh?
Salt, water, vinegar, one other.
Well, the 4 seasons of Los Angeles were, let's see if I remember, riot, fire, flood, and earthquake. There we go.
We didn't call it riot, we called it civil unrest.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Not PC to say riot.
You know, whatever. It's a riot, you know. Unfriendly people doing unfriendly things to other people. So, you know, that's what we have to deal with here in Southern California. We don't really have big floods. You know, floods, we get flash floods. They're really small. They're usually very, very constrained. You know, if you're in the Midwest, you got to deal with tornadoes. You got to deal with a very, very large floods like they are right now. Drought, which, you know, it's a little bit more of an indirect threat and can threaten you economically versus, you know, oh man, this drought's going to sweep my house away. Wait a minute, what the hell am I talking about? So, next step up, practice your plan. The best way to practice your plan is for everyday disasters. And one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit is kind of they call it typically the bug out bag. I just call it my just in case, because this is my just in case. It has pretty much everything I need just in case, and it fits in a case. Well, it's a backpack, but we'll talk about that in a second. And the thing with having your just in case or your bug out bag is that you're prepared for an everyday disaster. So what's an everyday disaster? Anybody?
Traffic on the 405.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Car breakdown.
You know what? Actually, traffic on the 405 is a good one because everybody has that almost every day. Well, you know what? If you're sitting there in traffic, you can't get off, or you don't want to get off, or you're really trying to get somewhere and you're hungry, reach in there, snap into a Slim Jim.
Freeway collapse.
You could have snowed in like this year when the snow came. Nobody was expecting it got snowed in the freeway.
Yeah, that you know, being snowed in on the freeway in Southern California.
You hurt your pants.
Yeah, it happened. Rip your pants?
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you got a sewing kit in there, that's one of the things you can add. The whole idea is that if you have that with you and you have, well, I just heard soil your pants. There's doctors you may want to talk to.
Local power outage.
Yeah, local power outage, not so much. But the main idea is that you have this bag, this case that you can go to just in case. So it's like, if you get used to relying on this to a certain extent, being like, man, I really got a headache. Well, do I want to go to Thrifty's and buy some Advil, or do I just pull some out of my bag? I'm hungry. Well, do I want to snack until dinner? I pull it out of my bag. Man, I need a fresh pair of socks. I pull it out of my bag. I'm thirsty. I got water in my bag. You know, on and on. So you're not really using the extended utility of the bag, but it's an everyday disaster. It allows you to prepare for it and allows you to let you know what's in there. You know, a lot of people build these disaster kits. They never open them up because it's not a disaster.
And cycle the food.
Well, they never cycle the food or anything else.
Is using it.
Yeah,
Cycle the food, cycle the water, because you don't want it after 4 years.
yeah, that's true. So, and the next big trope that comes along with this, not having a plan is planning to fail. So that's why you should have a plan. Main elements you should have on a plan is where you're gonna go. Usually that's somewhere safe. For most of us, that's our house. In certain circumstances, like let's say wildfire where you've been chased out of your house, maybe that's your office, maybe. Usually it's a family member, friend, somebody who lives relatively close but out of the immediate disaster area. And having multiples is usually the best way to go on that because you kind of distribute your response. What to do, if you plan for it, you can do it quickly. And that's kind of the number one thing. It's like, okay, there's a fire coming. What do I need to grab? Well, I grab my family pictures. I grab my important documents. And another thing, this is actually a gentleman here from Australia I was talking to the other day, was talking about they were having big floods. And one of the things you can do, you can scan all your photos in, and who here doesn't have a cell phone? Wow, no hands. So you carry this thing everywhere, right? Pretty much. Don't lose it too often. Most of these things have little SIM cards that you can put in. I mean, this is a little crappy phone. Put all your pictures on that. You can buy a 4 gig or 20 gig SIM card or whatever the hell it is.
These come with a 16.
Yeah, comes with a 16 gig SIM card. You can put a lot of photos, family photos that you can't replace anywhere else, a lot of personal documents on your phone. As long as you don't lose your phone, that's a big if. Does anybody here ever lose their phone? Okay, so for everybody but those two guys, or three, it's a good plan. You guys, you'll have to come up with something else. I've heard you. Yeah, there we go. You got it back. So for the two of you, you either need to not lose your phone or come up with a second plan. USB keys are a good one. Put those with a friend or family, something like that. Next thing you need to talk about is what to bring. Usually if you're going to a friend's house or a family member's house or something like that, you need to bring your own food and water. If they're impacted by the disaster, they're not going to be exactly excited about sharing their resources with you. So the more you can bring along, the better off you'll get along. I'll put it that way. Once again, the more water you can bring, especially if that's a grid down scenario or there's damage to the water system, the more water you can bring, the happier everybody will be. And the next thing that I keep kind of harping on is hygiene and first aid. Wash your hands, especially if water's in short supply. You know, waterless hand sanitizers are very good. You've probably seen the little things they have out in the area. Wash your hands. It keeps down illness. And if everybody's sick in a disaster scenario with not enough food and water, they're going to be really pissed. So the next thing that you probably want to bring, especially if you have family that has a large spread but maybe a small house, bring a tent. It's Southern California. Even in the winter, it's usually warm enough that you can sleep outside. So, you know, sleeping bag, a air mattress makes you a little bit more comfortable, as well as shelter. Next thing you have to do is you have to make the mental preparation. Good way of doing this is role playing. And yet, one of the components of role playing is what ifs. So you role play. It's like, well, what if there's zombies? Well, come up with a plan for zombies. it's going to be pretty close to what you have to deal with a riot or an earthquake. It's like, well, where I'm at's not safe. Why? Because there's zombies or an earthquake. Well, what are you going to do? Well, we're going to go to grandma's house. Where's grandma live? Well, she lives 200 miles away, and I can take the following 5 routes to go there. So you got to take and plan your what ifs. Like, what if I go this way and there's traffic, or there's zombies, or there's a bridge is falling down, something like that. Next thing you have to do is you have to make your physical preparations. You have to make your emergency kit or your just in case, like I was saying. You have to know where you're going. That's a very important thing. So talk to your friends and family if you're going to show up there. You know, grandma might not be too unhappy about it. You know, show up at that kind of weird brother-in-law's house. He might not be too happy about it. You know, friends, they might be happy to have you for a while, but that's not going to last forever. Another important thing, and this is something that a lot of people harp on, is the contact list. So let's say you get somewhere like a friend's house or a family member's house who maybe doesn't talk to everybody. You want to be able to call other members of your family, and if your phone gets wet or damaged or destroyed somehow, well, the nice thing about it, going back to that, even if your phone does get damaged, typically that SIM, unless it's submerged in salt water for an extended period of time, is still going to be good. So that's kind of makes it a little bit more durable. You know, but let's say you don't have a reader when you get there. So having a paper, little laminated contact list about the size of a business card, you can shove in your wallet, shove in your kit, somewhere where you can get to it, where you can call people once you get out of area and let them know you're okay. Very important thing. Another thing I don't have on the list here that kind of goes under physical preparation is, you know, a lot of us are computer geeks. I used to be a computer geek, so I know. We live very sedentary lifestyles. Get a gym membership, work out a little bit. Take a 20-minute walk every couple of days. Because the more physically prepared you are to have to walk an extended distance or anything like that, the less likely you are to be injured. And in an emergency situation, an injury can be life-threatening, even a small one. A twisted ankle, you can't walk. Bad news, guys. You know, work out a little bit. Mental preparation, once again, role playing, especially if you have children. Because you say, okay kids, what if there's a house fire? What do we do? You know, oh, well I go and I open my door and I run down the stairs and then I run out by the mailbox. Okay, and then you say, what if the doorknob's hot and you can't open it? You know, maybe they need to find another way out of the house. Maybe they're gonna climb out a window and try to climb down a trellis on the side, or you know, maybe your house is low enough that that's not an issue. Discuss the plans with your family. Have multiple plans. The more plans you have, the more flexible you can be, and the more likely you are to succeed. Once again, what ifs, kind of goes back to role playing. Physical preparation, emergency kit, places to go. I've already talked about some of this stuff, contact numbers, etc. Here's part of my emergency kit. This is where the magic part of the pointer comes in. So here I have what's called an ER bar. This is a solace ration. Anybody know what that is? Yep, boaters. There we go. Here, I'll tell you what, I'll even pull it out.
Pure calorie.
This is a solace ration. You don't really want to eat these unless you have to.
Tastes like sawdust.
It doesn't taste like, it's actually sort of pleasant when you're starving. It doesn't taste like sawdust. What it tastes like is it tastes like a cookie that's made out of wet concrete. It's kind of lemony and sugary. But you can buy these things for about $4 to $5. A good place to get these is called Honeyville Grains. They're here in Los Angeles. I think.
Online in a retail store.
Yeah. They also sell them online too, and I think it's mostly free shipping. That's a good place to start. And this is what they call these 3-day rations. You're supposed to eat the whole thing in 3 days. I don't know why you would. They're 2,400 calories. That's, if you're sitting around all day, that's about all the calories you need. If it's cold, you're gonna need more. So usually I'll keep a couple of these in my emergency kit.
How do you spell it?
ER, Echo Romeo, Bravo, Alpha Romeo, ER bar.
MREs or like humanitarian rates, whatever.
HDRs, humanitarian daily rations, taste horrible. They taste worse than this. I could talk to you about that a little bit more. But the advantage to these things versus a lot of other foodstuffs like MREs and a lot of other things is the density of calories. I mean, this thing weighs, I don't know, maybe, let's see, each 18-ounce packet, so it's just over a pound and has 2,400 calories. It's very hard to find that kind of energy density in a lot of foods. The next closest thing you're gonna find is gonna be like canned milk, which I don't know if you guys have ever tried to drink canned milk without watering it down at all. It's horrible. It's like trying, it's like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's not good. So these things are great for that. The next greatest thing are things like Slim Jims, because there's 15 packages in here. Each one is 160 calories, giving it a total calorie value of like 1,800 calories. And it tastes better than this.
How much of it is sugar?
Probably most of it. It's sugar, flour, and oil. Is coconut oil, I think. A little bit of lemon flavoring thrown in.
Soulless ration?
Soulless ration, SOLAS. You should know this. You're a pilot. All right. Other things. Usually keep a little multi-tool. You don't have to buy the most expensive one. I think the one I got there is like 25 bucks at Walmart. It's a little Gerber tool. Next thing I usually like to keep are a water and camp set. Which fits into this handy pouch. Uh-oh. And pretty much what this is a military canteen, titanium spork, canteen for water, cup, and stove. So I can boil water, I can make fresh water if I need to. It's kind of nice, a little weight saving, packed small. Other things you see on there, I got my ham radio, which is good because it's also wideband, so I can listen to regular FM, AM broadcasts. I also have a big selection of maps. Maps are good, especially if you don't know where you're going. Let's say you're out of town somewhere, trying to navigate unfamiliar terrain, trying to get back to grandma's house. It's a very good thing to have. I also have my little Gerber shovel there, which is very good. That's I know these pictures are kind of poor quality, but that's a folding shovel. That's part of my shelter. It's also part of my hygiene. So if I need to do that thing, you know, I can make me a little hole to do it in. If I need to sleep somewhere, I can dig a hole to sleep in. Other things I have, got my handgun there, one of them. I sometimes keep that in my emergency kit, not always, depends on where I'm going. If I'm traveling or something, I'll usually put it in there. You don't have to have a gun. Yes,
What caliber is it?
that one's a 380.
Personally, I have a 45 or a 9, but the reason I got mine was I was in North Carolina, stationed in North Carolina for a while. There was hurricanes a lot, and I was expecting if worst came to worst, I could run I could find like a local police station or cars and find ammo for my gun there, as opposed to.
You'll probably also find cops there.
Disaster comes and they leave. I mean, there's more places to find ammo for specific ammo calibers.
Maybe.
You shouldn't ever, you shouldn't ever focus on that. The best caliber to have is the one that you have ammo for.
Yes. So, no, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this one, guys, but, and then I also have my little first aid kit. It's really basic. I got a couple of Band-Aids. Personally, I don't like Band-Aids. I usually keep some, whatchamacallit, some skin wipes. Just keep your wounds clean. Band-Aids always get full of stuff and just keep the dirt close to your skin, so I don't like them. Gauze rollers are another big one. So if you have somebody who has a large traumatic injury, like let's say they got cut by a large piece of glass, what you can do is take the gauze rollers, bind them up, put them inside the wound, and then tape it. Very good way to stop bleeding. Also elevation. You should have something else for that. I talked about that earlier. Planning. That's what this is about. So part 2 emergency kit. This is also more shelter stuff. So right here I've got, you can see that kind of long thing right there. No, it's not that.
Actually, can you go back to the previous slide real quick?
Yes.
As far as keeping a first aid kit, in my experience, most ready to go small first aid kits like that are crap.
Yes.
Do you have one like that one that you recommend specifically?
No. The first thing I do when I buy one of those I usually buy little $5 first aid kits because they come with a box. I like the box. I'll take it. I'll take the gauze rollers out. The one thing you always want to save out of there is the splinter removers. Those things are awesome, and I can't find anywhere that I can buy them in quantity. I don't want to buy stuff from CountyCom because then I'll buy something else. So yeah, usually I'll take these things, I'll throw a pair of EMT shears in there, some gauze rollers, some medical tape, EMT tape, Advil. The big 4 drugs I always recommend everybody to keep are Advil, aspirin or Tylenol, usually aspirin, Benadryl, and Imodium. Those are the big 4. Because if you have somebody who's allergic, give them Benadryl. If you have somebody who has a upset stomach and diarrhea, well, that can lead to dehydration very quickly, so you need to give them some Imodium. If you have somebody who's got a headache, which is probably going to be you when you're dealing with somebody who has diarrhea and an allergic reaction, you'll be needing that personally. And aspirin for people who have heart conditions, need blood thinners or something else. It does work for people who suddenly have to get off statin drugs and stuff like that.
Buffered or unbuffered?
Usually I like buffered. It's a little bit easier on the stomach, especially if you have somebody who you're giving blood thinners to. Well, we can talk about that later. That's kind of a complex scientific question. Emergency kit part 2. So also here, I got my hat, keep the sun off. I have that little kind of, that other sausage thing there that's kind of rolled up. It's got a green right here. That's a US military poncho. That's my emergency shelter. That goes with the paracord that's right here, so I can tie it, kind of make myself a little tent. I have some hand soap, because I like to stay clean. Who knew? I got some spare socks, because I like clean socks. I got some underwear, because I like clean underwear. And then I also got some gloves to keep my hands from getting all cut up. And what else is that I got in there? That's the tabs. Oh, okay. And then that big long thing we were all joking about earlier, that's a very large salami. Which I bought one of those at Walmart for $4. It's 2,800 calories of delicious, awesome salami. Or maybe it is pepperoni, I don't remember. Either way, I'll be cutting into that later when we get to the 23B party, so if anybody would like to sample some of my survival food. Slim Jims, these are like $1.50 at Walmart. AM/FM radio is always handy to keep in contact, well, not necessarily keep in contact, but kind of keep apprised. The big one you always want in any of your radios, you always want AM. Because if the local FM stations are off the air, it doesn't do you any good. You're not really going to hear FM stations from far away. AM, here in Los Angeles, I've heard KFI like in eastern Texas at night. So, and I also usually get the San Francisco stations on my AM. I get, Utah occasionally. So if you're really trying to hear something from far away who may be broadcasting disaster information or news, AM radio is the only way to go. Other things I got in here that I consider important, I've got my little scarf So if I need to tie something over my face because I'm going to rob somebody because they got some food or water that I want, it's important. Or if there's disaster debris that I don't want to breathe. Over here, this is my little, this is a microfiber towel. I don't know if you guys have ever seen these before. These are awesome. It's a full-size towel that folds up this small. So you can usually get these at military PXs and stuff like that. They're about 20 bucks. If you ever get the opportunity, buy one. I seem to have forgotten to take a picture of my toilet paper roll. And also, because I'm a geek, I have a calculator in my kit, which also goes with my measuring stick or measuring tape. So any questions about the emergency kit?
Do you have a flashlight?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because two of the things I almost always carry in my pockets are, I've got my Surefire, just a little G2. These things cost about 40, 50 bucks, and pocket knife. So I also smoke, so I usually have one of these too. So that's kind of the basics. I got fire, cutting stuff, and light to see what I'm cutting up.
And one thing to mention about the batteries of the radios, you have to have a schedule in which you recharge them because they die.
The trick with the radios, and that actually goes back here, is you'll notice that I have a very specific brand of batteries. I use only the Energizer lithium advanced batteries. These things have a 10-year shelf life and still have, 80% of their juice after 10 years?
They're high milliamp hour.
Yeah, and they're 3 amp hour at 1.5 volts, so they provide a lot of juice, and I usually carry the battery adapter that goes with my radio, so that kind of gets me around it. Also, my AM/FM radio takes the same kind of batteries. Unfortunately, my G2, my flashlight here, takes 1, 2, 3s, which I usually have. I just didn't put a picture in there. So conclusions. We're the arbiters of our own security. That's fundamental. When the chips are down, nobody else is there to help you. Planning and preparation are the tools that we use to ensure it. That's one of the things that has been static in mankind since we emerged from the trees some, 500,000 years ago. So these are the things that you need to think about. I don't want to give you guys a list of things that you go home and say, oh, I need a first aid kit, I need this. Think about it. Think about what you need. Put it in a bag. See if the bag's heavy enough. Try carrying it. Walk around the block a couple times. If that bag's too heavy, maybe trade something out. Maybe you're like, well, maybe I don't need this. Maybe I can use something that's a little bit lighter or a little bit smaller. Try it out. And that's why I say live through everyday disasters, because when a big disaster hits, you're going to be a lot more prepared. Q&A.
Something I've started doing in my disaster bag,
Mhm.
deck of cards.
Yep.
Entertaining.
Yeah, because I gave a similar talk at tour camp a couple years ago, and somebody brought that up, and I realized, that, you're trapped in a collapsed building.
Yeah.
You got to have something to do, or else you're going to go nutty. And if you got kids with you,
Mhm.
you're going to need to keep them occupied as well.
Mhm.
Somebody even suggested getting some of those travel board games, like you take in the car
Mhm.
for the kids.
Yep.
So yeah, play checkers, things like that.
Very good suggestion. Yes, sir.
The other thing I do is modularize.
Yep.
So the thing of it is I'm not gonna carry all my kit all at once.
Mhm.
I definitely wanna have kit, minimum load out of that. Mine's a little different than yours, that
Yeah.
we'll discuss this. But you can always go ahead and ditch the main bag. It's going to be bigger, just to go ahead and take the smaller one and get the hell out.
Yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if you guys noticed this at all, but this bag has a couple of different features. It has a built-in hydration pack, and this part down here, which I kind of wish it had a little bit more of, but it's got what they call mole. It's a military attachment system that they've replaced. But the nice thing about these kind of things, you can hang more stuff off it. Pardon me. Stuff that doesn't fit. So it's a really good way that you can take and kind of bolster the amount of storage capacity in a small bag. The other thing I can do is what I'll do is tie some loops in it, and I can put a blanket over the top. You know, it makes it pretty easy to carry. Or you can buy those little, $10 fleece sleeping bags over at Wally World. Those things are great as long as you're staying inside. If you got to stay outside, they get a little bit more marginal. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, one thing I think about with regards to disasters is potable water here in California. We live in a desert.
Yeah.
But I read something about using bleach to clean water, to create drinkable water.
Yes, you can. The question he had was, I don't know if everybody heard that or not, but the question he had was about using bleach to sanitize water. Bleach is probably one of the best ways to sanitize water. That's part of the reason why we chlorinate water still. There's a number of pamphlets out there. I could try to recite from memory. I think it's 2 drops per quart for clear water, and it's 8 drops per quart for dirty water. The solution I usually like to take is I usually like to boil water first, because one of the other problems we have here in Southern California typically is we also have solvent contamination. And what'll happen is when you boil water, you drive those solvents off because they're volatile. And as long as you keep that at a rolling boil for either 5 or 15 minutes, depending on your altitude, that will sanitize the water.
I also found out, I actually just swapped out my water supplies like not even a month ago. A teaspoon of bleach for 5 gallons of water. And the thing to remember with it too is the bleach works instantly, so it's not a stabilizer.
Yep.
So what happens is, you put your bleach in to your nice clean water can, you seal it up, but also realize if you come back in a year, you're gonna want to do some bleach in it again before you try drinking it, because over that time there may have been some bacteria in there. It won't stabilize it.
Yeah.
Or boil.
Yeah, or boil, which you probably should be doing anyways.
Yeah. Or just take bigger water supplies and use those for hygiene use, washing your hands.
Yeah, that's actually what my water storage is for.
Yeah.
Because I figure around the house, I got water out of the back of the toilet tank, I got water in the water heater for drinkable water, but this is the stuff you can use to wash your dishes.
Yep.
People forget about all those things they have.
Yeah. All your resources.
Also, if the water is stale, you need to aerate it. Put air in the
Oh
water.
yeah, aerating the water. That's one of those things typically that makes it a little bit more palatable afterwards. Especially if you're boiling water. One thing I kind of forgot to put in my kit there. One thing I usually carry is tea bags. Because personally, if you're trying to drink nasty, brackish water that you had to boil to sterilize, or you had to add a bunch of bleach to get all the nasty stuff out, if you make tea, it's a lot more palatable. Another thing that works really good is you can buy those little, single-serving Gatorade things, which I've been seeing they cost about $5 for like 10 of the little packets. I usually carry those. These things. And the nice thing is that if you have diarrhea or something like that, stuff like this will make sure that those fluids that you're taking in don't just tear right through you and out the other end. So in combination with Imodium, this will help keep all that stuff in your body, and it'll help you hydrate a little bit better.
I found for home storage stuff, the things like those Gatorade packets. If you go to a place like, oh god, the name is escaping me right now. It's the small version of Costco.
Sam's Club or?
No, not Sam's Club. Smart and Final.
Oh, Smart and Final.
Smart and Final, or any restaurant supply place, you can get the big packets of Gatorade, which will make typically a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, it's usually
and
2.5.
they're about 5 to 10 times cheaper than the single serving ones.
Yeah.
And you can subdivide them up to make single servings, or you can keep them for doing 5 gallons at a time.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah, what's
Sounds-
what's the best way to store water long term?
Best way to store water long term, typically what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll buy those 55-gallon plastic drums. Look around, because a lot of survival stores will sell those things to you for like $75+. Don't go there. It's like, yeah, they're new, but you're just gonna put water in them and it's gonna get nasty anyway. Look around beverage companies, like places that bottle Coca-Cola and stuff like that. Get the syrup in those same things. So it's a food grade container that's been full of syrup. One thing that will happen with a lot of those kind of places is they'll leave the caps uncorked, so it'll rain and it'll get water in it and they kind of grow nasty stuff. Take those things, wash them out real good, take them out in your backyard, just hose them out. Throw in about, I don't know, 3 or 4 tablespoons of OxyClean and about half a gallon of white vinegar. Close it up, shake it up, it gets all the nasties out, and then just dump it out, hose it clean, and you're good to go. It's just like having a brand new one. It just may be a little discolored from the soda chemicals.
Companies that sell brewing supplies.
Yep.
Get rid of their barrels periodically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brewing supply places.
Animal feed as well.
Yeah, animal feed. Some of the other places I found was one place does soy sauce. So your water comes out a little kind of salty soy tasting, a little weird.
A lot of tack and feed places. I think
Yeah.
someone just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, tack and feed places usually have those
Mhm.
pretty cheap.
I know this question kind of goes in, I guess, on the advanced a little bit, one step up.
Uh-huh.
But like having a generator.
Yeah, I kind of discourage people from getting generators. One of the lessons we took away from Hurricane Katrina was everybody who had generators, everybody who didn't have generators, the first thing they heard was kind of this far off engine noise, and they're like, I'm hungry, and I hear a generator. So pretty much that's like ringing the dinner bell. Everybody from, far around are gonna be like, well, he's got a generator. That means he's probably got food. That means he's probably got water. Unless you really need to run a generator, like let's say, grandma's on a ventilator and you're trying to keep her alive, I highly discourage people from running generators.
Yeah, that's one thing I worry about. I can have a garage full of food and water. Somebody finds out about that when it all goes down,
Yep.
we're screwed. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll have a neighbor that comes to my door.
Yeah, that's why I keep a gun in my kit.
For the home candles, go to IKEA.
Yeah.
IKEA has bulk candles for just pennies on the dollar.
Well, candles are another one of those things like generators where it's kind of like ringing the dinner bell. It's a little more visual than auditory.
It can be, yeah.
Because you're now taking in a sea of darkness, there's a light. That usually means food and water too.
You can always hit the 99-cent stores too. Go
Yeah.
to like the bad part of town, go to the 99-cent store, and you'll get those giant 3-wick candles that will burn for days and days for $1.
Yep.
But you gotta be careful with it.
The
Yeah.
devotional candles too.
Most of them smell.
Yeah, 99 cents only stores is a great resource. I like to buy all my medical stuff there. Usually gauze rollers, EMT shears are available there for $1. Don't usually buy drugs there just because they're usually expired. But yeah, 99 cent store is a good resource. I'm going to do 2 more questions.
So just a thought off the candles thing. You're right that a light in your house is going to attract attention. This is why you should have at least one room where you've used your duct tape and some cloth to black out your windows, because it's a huge emotional lift to have a bit of light in the darkness. But you don't want to share that with the neighborhood. So have a room where you blacked it out and then don't light up the entire house. with your
The
candles.
best thing for blacking out windows is actually not paper or cloth, but foil. Tin foil. Yeah, as long as it doesn't get around the sides. Anybody else? One last one. Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and watching me speak and listening to me carry on. I probably did so longer than I was supposed to. Make sure to tip your waitresses, and thank you for coming to LayerOne. We'll see you guys later. Hey, anybody want a Slim Jim? You already got one.